Hi, I'm Krishna Manda, and I beat the often path by building smart motorcycle helmet technology.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we celebrate unique and inspiring success stories to help us think outside the box in our lives and careers. Joining me today is Krishna Manda, the co-founder and CEO of Etho, Inc., a startup building augmented reality hardware and software for motorcycle helmets, including a voice assistant, navigation, and riding information displayed right on the inside of your helmet. It's super cool so that you can keep your eyes on the road as you ride. With 68% of daily commuters admitting to using their phones to navigate to places, these kinds of distractions can be fatal on motorcycles, where every second and every reaction counts. Learn how a life-changing accident set this aerospace engineer on the path to creating a revolutionary product. So here's Krishna Manda, CEO of Etho, Inc. All right, motorcycles, very safe, very fun, very easy to ride. As somebody who's been in one serious motorcycle accident in my entire life, what is it about the appeal of motorcycles and what is it about this genre that attracted you?
So I was always a speed freak per se since I was a kid, or more or less driving freak. It wasn't necessarily with going fast, but just going anywhere. My family never actually owned a vehicle of our own until until my fifth grade. A vehicle meaning a car. Up until that point, my dad had his own work vehicle, which is a police officer's car in India, which was pretty fun to get around town. And when he didn't use his work vehicle, it was his motorcycle. So that's where my earliest memory started with. And I remember when I was like really young, I it was sort of a rainy night, just starting to drizzle, and there was a train right by the side. And I asked my dad, "Hey, can you race that train?" And then he did, and we were like going at it, and that was one of the most surreal moments. So that was, I would say, that's where my love for motorcycles kicked off.
This is actually a good story. So I was trying to get my motorcycle license.
Okay.
And I was practicing for the test, and I was pretty good. So it's going to sound so stupid, but I'm just going to say it anyways. So practicing for the test in the lot, they've got this little course in America. This is in Colorado somewhere. And I'm doing the course, and you do all these things. You weave, you do a turn, you do start, stop, whatever. And you get to the last one. And I can't remember what it is, but it's something like you go around a cone and then you go and then you have to stop. But it was involving sort of turning and stopping at the same time. And I did the classic mistake where I hit the front brake too hard. So I flipped over the handlebars. And I would have been totally fine. I mean, it was a horrible wreck. I would have been completely fine. I had all the gear on, except I rolled around and I trapped my thumb between. I hit the ground and I shattered my thumb. Yeah, and to this day, I lost all of the tendon in my thumb joint. It's they call it skier's thumb. I didn't know that. I thought it was broken. I didn't know the tendon was gone. But so that's an injury that I have to live with the rest of my life, apparently. And then after that, the appeal. But of course, like this was far away from where I was going, so I had to ride that bike home the next like 45 minutes with just like one arm. So that was sort of the last time that I rode motorcycles. It was like a very quick journey. But I gather, I know it's so stupid, but I gather you have probably a much cooler story, but a similar story to how you got interested in some of the stuff you did, right?
So this is going to sound quite crazy, but basically, in 2016 December, there's this. I use T-Mobile, so if T-Mobile sponsors you, great.
Yeah, that's right. T-Mobile I'm getting a cut of that sweet ad money.
Yeah, so the T-Mobile had this thing called T-Mobile Tuesdays, and they were offering a free movie ticket for Star Wars at that moment. So I was in Brooklyn at the time. It was a nice 60-degree day in the middle of December, which was amazing. So I got the ticket, went to go watch that movie, and then in Manhattan, and then on my way back, that's when, while I was looking down on my GPS quickly, I had the right of way. It was a green light, everything. But I looked down on my GPS. I was doing the speed limit, and an old lady T-bones me, and she crashes into my right arm, and basically my arm is fractured. Like so much so, my bone is sticking out. I have my watch. I don't know where it is right now, but I kept that watch as a reminder. The leather on the inside is covered in blood. Like,
Ew.
yeah, it's quite gory.
Yeah.
And I have this vivid memory. I was screaming, on like the moment. I don't even remember seeing these people like who hit me. But yeah, someone called 911. This was in Brooklyn. Yeah, I remembered everything all the way until I was in the hospital and the police were questioning me about, hey, what happened? And then I specifically told my the doctor, or not the doctor, I don't know who they were, the EMT guys, I guess. I said, hey, no drugs, no drugs. And apparently, while I was talking to the police officers, they injected me with morphine or heroin. I don't think it's heroin. I don't know,
Morphine
whatever
or
it is, but
Oxycontin or one of those opioids. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not whatever it was, and then I was just like, oh my god. So I was sort of dozing out as I was giving my statement, and what they did within that moment, because it was the evening, it was after Christmas, like Eve. So 26th or 27th December, not many doctors available. So they gave me that, so that in the short time that they did that, they actually removed my bones, which was completely shattered in four pieces. They removed it and they tried to like put it together like Lego pieces, and then they wrapped it in bandages. Oh my god! I didn't feel anything then, but that was probably the worst night of my life because I was not allowed to move my hand, and they couldn't do anything other than just say, "Don't move your hand." And imagine being there from 6 p.m. that night, 6 7 p.m. on that night to the next day until 12 a.m. You could not move your arm. In the middle of the night, I just had this phantom movement, like, and I'm a fidgety guy. I move my legs, move my hands. I have the restless leg syndrome, whatever you call it. And in the middle of the night, I remember like around 1 or 2 o'clock, I just lifted my hand up all on its own because I just couldn't. I guess it was like
Eee.
my mind's reaction that I still have my arm.
No.
Oh my god, that was on a that was the one time where I would say my worst, like beyond the accident, the adrenaline, all of that kicked in. So actually, it was less painful than when I just lifted my arm up. Oh
Oh
my
my
god, that
God.
was that was horrible.
So you
Yeah,
just had that moment where you're like,
I remember
internal
that.
scream, just
I actually
shrieking.
screamed out loud, and I
Oh, yeah,
woke up
of
all of the
course.
other people. God.
That's what everybody wants to hear while they're sleeping, just somebody shrieking in the other room. Um, all right, so you quickly learned the joys and the pain of motorcycles. Your story is infinitely cooler than mine. First of all, it wasn't your fault. Second of all, it was a real motorcycle. Third of all, you handled it like a badass. I did none of those things. Um, but so this story got you interested in the idea of, okay, motorcycles, perhaps there's some room to improve. When did you start getting with the idea that you could build tech for motorcycles or motorcyclists? When did that seed plant itself?
That's a good question. So I was studying aerospace engineering. I came to the U.S. to pursue that career, specifically so that I could build or work on flying tech, like specifically flying cars. Sooner or later, I figured out that no matter what we do, we cannot have a traditional flying car as we so thought. In fact, I think the closest we could get to a future of flying cars would be where if you imagine the electric car of today, basically all of the components that make the electric car are in the base of the car,
Mm,
with the wheels and such.
mm,
So, and if you can imagine a small box that goes on top of it, that's what people will be able to buy, customize, do whatever they want to do. So imagine there's a box on a skateboard just going around, and that in and of itself is a big expensive piece. You can buy that, and then what would happen eventually is, let's say you want to get from New York to Philadelphia, which by road would be 2 hours, but by air would be maybe an hour. You could contact an on-demand drone from that same company, and then that drone will come attached to the top of that box. The box would detach from the base. The base with all the sensors will just drive away, and this box will take you and drop it on a different base in a different part. So that's where I believe the autonomous flying future might go towards,
mm.
and that's what I wanted to work on. But around that time, so since I got into the space to really disrupt everything, I've always challenged the status quo. And so that's where we actually got in with the idea. So because of that attitude sort of set into me in college, motorcycling was no different. It was just a matter of, it hasn't changed. Let's just be disruptive. Why don't we make something real happen? And then as we were exploring ideas, my accident happened, and then it made sense. Oh, why don't we make Iron Man's helmet? Why is that not real?
Hmm.
And then because heads up displays exist in cars, why don't they exist on motorcycles? And so that question really
Absolutely.
led us down the rabbit hole.
And they really hadn't up until you came up with it. It doesn't exist anywhere else
So
because you'd say it's a super easy thing to imagine, at least.
So yeah, so people have made concepts in the same way that nowadays there's a lot of electric car concepts, but they never actually make it to production. Like Rivian, other than Tesla, Rivian is the only second company that has actually gone to production with a prototype. So people have made prototypes, but the process of getting them off the ground, getting them certified, going through all that process, learning what to do and what not to do, and it's a whole new market. Nobody has done this before, so there's a learning curve to it. So we learn from the people that have made prototypes. Why did it fail? Why did this not happen? And then try to make the right changes in the right places to see if our recipe works, and thankfully it has.
That's awesome. Well, for those who maybe haven't driven a car with a heads up display, the technology, if you've seen them, I've been in cars like this where it's basically a projector that projects all of the information onto a windshield. And it's incredible because you just look at this little square of your windshield as you're driving and you have all of the information. You can have your speed limit. You can even have cars to the left of you, to the front of you, behind you. All that stuff in one little grid is amazing. So I completely agree that, especially for motorcycles, it makes incredible sense to have all of that in your helmet. How much cooler would that be? Because I feel like when you are on a motorcycle, if you wear a helmet, you're constantly limited in your vision. That's one thing that people don't necessarily realize. You're limited. Your peripheral vision is limited. Yes, you have mirrors, but it's difficult to keep track of all of those things and to keep track of the road, as your story also illustrates. It's hard to manage all of the stuff that you need to do. And you got to couple that with the fact that there are laws about the kind of stuff that you can do, such as you can't have headphones on or you can't be listening to music officially when you're on a motorcycle, even though the crack addicts who are motorcyclists will know that that's probably the most fun thing in the entire world. Listening to music on a bike or a motorcycle is probably the most fun thing ever.
Oh God, yeah, and that's why companies like Santa Cardo, all of them exist, because that's what people want to do. And so,
Yep.
as long as you can do it safely, and that I think is the difference that even the government and regulation hasn't caught up to, is that it's not the information that's distracting, it's the way information is consumed. So information can either inhibit your sense, or it can heighten your knowledge of your peripherals by just with the change of medium and where you see it. If you see it on a phone, it's taking your eyes off the road. But if it's on the road through a heads-up display, it can really enhance your view, not only in with the speed limit or speed information, but eventually we also want to be able to recognize vehicles that are swerving way ahead. So almost supplementing the person's vision to let them see more than they normally would as they focus on the road.
So are there cameras baked into this thing, front and back?
Yeah.
What kind of sensors do you have in there?
So we can't talk too much about that online, but
Secret.
effectively, yes, we have gyros, we have cameras, we also, and the cameras are computer vision capable, meaning that we again, I would not publish this, but basically, we want to paint arrows on the road eventually. Or actually, it's fine, I guess. If you want to
Okay.
post this,
You gotta let me know, man, because it's going in.
sorry about it. Yeah. So yeah, the originally when we started this off, we wanted to paint the GPS information directly on the road, exactly like you would see in Need for Speed or Forza or any of these
Sure.
racing games. It would be so cool. But the immediate challenge that we actually ran into is the frame of reference. So in a driverless car, the camera is on a fixed frame of reference. Yes, the car moves about, but there's very little movement, and the camera is in the same steady,
Yeah.
fixed position in order to correctly recognize the lanes and the roads and the signs and all of that, because they're all in a constant place. on a motorcycle helmet, the person's head is always moving. So the camera's point of view is always changing. And even with a stereo camera, it's really hard to get all the depth reference right and be able to paint all of those arrows right. Although it is a huge next step in that computing process. Plus, we have a lot less computing power than an autonomous vehicle does because of the limited power that we're able to draw. So we are working on a very advanced computer vision algorithm so that we can we can supplement some of that information and be able to eventually paint the arrows on the road. But for that, we need a bit more data set, and we but our system at the moment is capable of doing it. It's just not in a moving frame of reference. It can do it in a fixed frame of reference, and we're optimizing it to go into moving frame of reference. Sorry if I'm getting too technical.
No, that's really, I love that stuff. It's awesome. It kind of brings to mind the idea with all of these EVs and autonomous vehicles being produced in general. Doesn't
Yeah.
it seem like our roads should have some kind of basic infrastructure, some kind of chip on each side or markers at regular intervals that can easily interface with all of these kinds of tech? Shouldn't that be sort of standardized such that your frame of reference, whatever vehicle, I mean, should be able to be determined, especially when you're in between two markers?
That's true. I mean that I believe in the United States at the moment falls a lot on again with my limited knowledge within the space. That's vehicle to infrastructure sensors, and that at the moment falls on the governments and the cities to take that up. If it is privatized, then I believe that that would be quite compelling. But I don't believe there might be too much of an incentive at the moment. The only
Mm,
city that I know that has done vehicle to infrastructure sensors is Vegas, and they
makes
have it
sense.
to a point where Audi specifically, at least the Audi that I rented, it could recognize the stop sign or the signal light within like it's going to turn red in a couple of seconds. So just like maintain this speed so that you can go there. Yeah. So I think that would fall on the cities at the moment. I think.
I mean, you have to believe that that is what we need to do just from a safety aspect. Having that kind of information coming in. We talk about the Internet of Things. Why is it that my refrigerator can know that I need milk, but a stop sign can't tell you that you should stop? Which one of those seems more valuable? If we're going to be putting chips in everything, why not the most logical things? And it doesn't even have to be a computer, just some kind of RFID or just some sort of sensor, right? It doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't even have to be powered, I don't think, for it to work effectively.
Yeah, no, it can be very simple, and I agree with you 100%. But I guess I don't
Not yet.
know
Yeah.
political
So
sentiment
you've got to
just
do
yet.
an example. You've got to do crazy algorithms to get there in the meantime, which is even cooler and more difficult. Um, so is there any talk of one day being able to have the helmet communicate with the bike itself, or do you have to just operate as if it's a completely separate entity?
I can definitely talk about that. Yes, we are working with motorcycle companies at the moment actively to integrate our part of our system. So version 2.0 would actually be part of. There will be an integrated ECU unit within the bike, or something that plugs into a canvas output, and it'll communicate relevant information, like if there is tire pressure information or something else, to the helmet, and you can request the voice assistant, hey, what's my tire where's the what's my fuel level at, and it can give you that information so that you can go and do whatever you need to do. So that is a direct integration that we're working on. So ideally, first it'll start off with a bike level integration, and then eventually the second part would be canvas. So bikes that didn't come with it, you just plug this in and it's able to draw enough power and communicate with the helmet.
So AR, do you feel that AR is the most exciting part of the future, or do you also think that VR is cool?
Thanks, Ross. I mean, that's a good question, and I can't agree with you more. I agree that VR is good in a sense of what it, but it's limited in what it can accomplish per se. Um, AR has more practical applications, but both have sort of this hump to get over, which is mainly the social acceptance hump. And tying it back to our business and the reason why we picked what we did, which is the motorcycle helmets part. Um, there was the Google Glass that launched in 2013, 2014, not
Yeah.
really, or 2015, not familiar, but they when people were wearing it and walking around, they were called glass holes.
I
So
remember that. Yeah.
so the same thing with like anyone who was, I believe there was an airline, I forgot which one, that tried to wear HoloLens to try to talk to people, and people were just uncomfortable with that. There's this, and VR is more acceptable because it's almost like a solo thing. You're doing it on your own, and it can be, and it has gaming applications at the moment, so that doesn't necessarily need that social aspect to get over. But augmented reality, despite of whatever the factors it has to do, it has to get over that. So we looked at that, and the reason why we picked motorcycle helmets is because people already wear this. Whether or not there's an AR element to this or not doesn't make any difference. And in fact, it is one exception where an augmented reality product becomes cooler. Like if you wear glasses and wear AR, you become a glass hole. If you do that with anything else, that people are just like uncomfortable. But you do that to a motorcycle, and they're like, "Wow, that's cool. That's Iron Man's helmet. That's whatever." Like, that I think is the only exception, and that's why we like working in on the product that we do. And I think there is still, until another, I don't want to make a judgment, but maybe 5-10 years away from everybody just accepting that augmented reality is a thing, or that VR is a thing and it's normal. Yeah, that those are my genuine thoughts. I really believe that AR has huge applications, but at the moment, everything is, it's nice, it's great, it's cool, but I don't necessarily need it. So I think if anyone is working in AR stuff, they have to be working on things that will make a big difference, whether it is solving distracted writing or something that without it, people can't live without it. Because that's what made the phone revolution in the early 2000s blow out, is that without it, they just didn't have an alternative. It was going back to the computer or doing something, being able to send an email while you were at a lunch. That was revolutionary. So we got to focus on those things rather than fringe applications like, oh, I can go and shop at Walmart on on the metaverse. That doesn't add any value. Or I can buy a 500,000 plot of land next to Snoop Dogg.
Ugh,
Well, what
I
value
know.
does that really add?
I know. That whole thing is, I don't use the word often, but very cringe. It's very, very, very cringe. To spend any amount of money on that is just, I would never personally do it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing out on billions of potential dollars, but I would never, ever personally invest in any of that stuff. I don't see the
Yeah,
value there.
I
And you bring
do.
up,
I agree with you.
what do you think about your idea? What was it that attracted investment at that early stage? What was it that you had that made them want to invest in you, do you think?
That's a very good question. So, especially even with a small proof of concept stage, investors still look heavily on the founders. They want to know that the founders are. I don't want to put anyone down, but basically, from an investor standpoint, I believe one of the tests that investors do is if they know information more than you, they're unlikely to invest. You need to be the master of your trade. So there cannot be any holes that are questioned around you in order to get things. Yeah. So I would focus mostly on knowing what you do best, and in people can see through whether, are you passionate about this? Are you going to, because going is going to get, so I'll give you an example from our perspective, from my engineering college. So I took up aerospace engineering. Guess how many people drop off after the gauntlet, which is around the fourth semester?
Well, if I had to guess, I would say look at the person to the left of you, look at the person to the right of you. Both of them will be gone.
Yes, very much so. So our drop off rate was about 87%
Okay.
after the gauntlet from the aerospace
The
engineering program.
gauntlet. I
It's
love stuff like
it's
that.
it just like really takes a beating off of you. So,
It just must be
and
really
what
tough.
it's extremely tough. Like people assume that,
Tough field.
and the people that actually survive that, and what happens with the gauntlet, every single one basically loses hope. Like you're just like, oh my god, there's so much new things. Am I even worth it? You start to question your self worth. You start to do all of that, but the only thing when you're actually out of fuel that gets you through is your true passion. If there's something deeper and meaningful, that'll carry you through that. And those are the only 13% that make through. That's about the same thing in founders thing. Everyone, the beginning of everything is always great, but you will, as a founder, face issues. We almost ran out of money once, and we actually did. We were running on fumes, yet me and my co-founder, we persevered, and we eventually got through that, and we actually became a successful company after that. And that happened like 1 year after we started. So around 2018 was when we really were like, we almost were about to sign a deal with a VC who backed out at the last minute for whatever reasons, but. Yeah, that was devastating, and it happens to everyone. So investors want to know that they're investing in founders, not just the ones that know the information, but that you're passionate, that you will be the one that can, when times get tough to a point where you can't see the future, like nothing is happening, you're literally throwing darts in the dark, that you even have the power to throw multiple darts in the dark. That's what you got to convey, and that will only come down to how you yourself, how true are you? Is this a project you're doing for money, or is this something that you're doing because you genuinely want to do this?
So I'd like you to wrap it up if you can. So what do you want to promote, or what do you want to draw people towards? How can they get involved? How can they support what you're doing, or follow you, or be ready for when you are launching?
Oh, that's awesome. So we are on etho.io, www.etho.io. Please go there, join our program, join our beta program if you want to be a beta tester, or if you're interested in investing in the company, you can come talk to us there, connect with us, and one of our people will reach out to you. In addition, please follow us on social media, Ethomotive, ETHOMOTIVE. We sort of wanted to be a dictionary term of automotive awakening. We definitely believe that it's going to be the future of how we interact. This is going to be a milestone marker for motorcycling, as in pre-Etho and post-Etho. So
I agree.
hopefully we can get there.
That's cool. And I'm going to be the first one. I'm going to be in your beta test, and I'm just going to wear it walking around.
Well, actually, you
I'm
could
just going to run
one
GPS
of our
walking through the
investors
streets.
actually tries to ride with it with a unicycle, believe it or not.
Hey, I unicycled for many years. That's what I'm talking about, right? I need GPS on my unicycle. Let's think a little bit more. Let's expand our vision here a little bit, Krishna. We've got to. Motorcycles is too narrow.
Indeed.
No,
I mean, there is this. There are at least two of these devices that I've seen. One is a balance on a go-kart wheel in the middle and a balancing skateboard. Have you seen that one?
oh yeah, those terrify me. I will kill myself if I ever own one of those. I'm never gonna do it.
I've
They
seen.
look awesome though. They're fast.
Yeah, and then there's this other one which looks Tron-like, where it's like a giant wheel somehow. It's with a wheel cover and it goes right in
And they've
between your
got two
legs.
pedals on this. Yeah, I saw a
Yeah,
guy. I went bike riding with a guy who has one of those, and he was going 40 miles an hour.
it's
Crazy.
it's insane. Like I'm in a motorcycle, but that seems far more because that's even less balance. Like if you go over a pebble, you could just basically wipe
I
out.
would never, ever. I'll stick to regular unicycles. I like e-bikes, but not that. Ugh.
Yeah. So
Awesome,
you
man.
actually unicycle
Oh yeah, I
traditional.
unicycled very seriously for a very long period of time. I was the first person ever. So I grew up in Colorado. I was the first person ever to unicycle down Steamboat Mountain that they'd ever
Wow.
seen. So you can take gondolas up in the winter and you go skiing or snowboarding down the mountain, but they leave the gondola open in the summer, and then you can take your bike up, and they have expert trails and they have easy trails. It's amazing because it's just 45 minutes of just straight downhill. I brought my unicycle, and I was the first person they'd ever seen that tried to do that. And I had to actually debate with the managers before they would let me up there, because my unicycle didn't have a brake on it, and they couldn't conceive of the idea that you could do something like that without a brake. So I had to show them. I said, like, no, the wheel is attached to the pedals. It can't go if the pedals don't go. So brakes, while helpful, aren't necessary. So I had to explain, and I had to jump up onto picnic tables and jump off, and I jumped onto a boulder and off and did all this stuff to show them that I could do it. And they said okay, but I think immediately after, they probably went racing back to their legal team to more or less outlaw that practice. They said, we can't officially stop you, but in our hearts, we know it's a bad idea. But I did it, and it was amazing. And I could actually do stuff on a unicycle. I could go down much more difficult stuff on a unicycle than I could on a bike by a lot. I could go down anything on a unicycle. I could
Wow.
go off 6-foot jumps. I could go down really steep stuff, and because you can also hop up stuff, I could hop up 12 inches at a time, hop up boulders. So I
Now
got
we
very,
know. I
very
mean,
into it.
Ross is a unique. This is your talent. This is your passion in a sense. So it makes sense. We'll definitely get you a smart helmet so that you can ride with your unicycle
Yes,
safely.
that's
And
great. Further cementing my popularity for all of eternity.
the only one unicyclist in the world who has a smart helmet who can do
Nothing says
things.
cool like that. Well, awesome, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure you got a million things to do, so we'll wrap up the official episode. And with that, the official episode is over.